I'll tell you what frustrates me when people talk about John sometimes is he'll have a performance like the first two rounds of Gustafsson. Like you'll hear some people say like, oh, he started slow and oh, he was doing this. First off, I thought John was controlling range very well. He was throwing his kicks and he was moving backwards. And I think that if you went back and watched the first two rounds over, you'll realize that Gustafsson is slowly getting more and more and more frustrated. He couldn't really land anything clean. When he did, it wasn't really meaningful. And John was just, and then you see in the third round, he comes out and takes him down. It's like John was lowering him into a trap to try to get him to be more aggressive and then took him down. And then you got people who say, well, you know, DC won the first two rounds of their first fight, arguably. And maybe, but if you go back and watch the first two rounds, John's just lighting him up to the body over it, over again. As soon as that fucking hand drops, John's shin is upside DC's head. I mean, there are a lot of things that make John Jones the greatest fighter that's ever lived. I want to make the distinct. I've said before that I think DC is the GOAT, right? Like as far as, and I mean that in terms of what he's been able to, not only in terms of what he's been able to accomplish, he's only ever lost to John, but as far as how he represents the sport and the things that he's done for the sport of MMA. And he's such a role model, right? And he does everything right. So if that makes any sense, Daniel Cormier is probably the greatest fighter and representative for the sport of MMA ever, in my opinion. I mean, he's so high level. His wrestling is at an Olympic level. He trains with guys like Luke Rockhold and Cain Velasquez and Habib on a daily basis. And his only loss is against who I think is the greatest fighter ever. I know that doesn't fucking make a whole lot of sense, but DC is probably the greatest fighter in UFC. It's so hard to say that though, right? Like I can't say he's the greatest ever because John is the greatest fighter ever. I really believe that. I don't think Silva's better than John. I don't think Demetrius is better than John. I think John's the best. I mean, he just does everything so well. And there are a lot of things like I said, there are a lot of things that make John the best, but the thing that is the most impressive about him is his creativeness and his ability to take people into their own element, take them in to, he's able to take what they're good at and use it against them and do it better than them. And he's just got a God-given talent for fighting. I mean, he was blessed with some sort of gift from the MMA gods, and he's brilliant at it. I mean, he doesn't get himself into a lot of dangerous situations. He hardly ever spends time on his back, and when he does, he's right back to his feet. I mean, Gustafsson's the only guy to successfully take him down, right? And he fucking shot right back up. He doesn't spend any time down there. If he does, he's on top, and he manages distance well. His timing is brilliant. We were talking earlier about how when guys start getting further and further away from their prime, they start to get rooted. I think they start to get rooted more in what they were really good at, right? Their bread and butter. And it's like with John. John is this guy who isn't just testing stuff out in the gym. He'll try it in the octagon. It just fucking works. Like for whatever reason, everything he does works. He just knows how to throw it, when to throw it, how to maneuver his body. He understands leverage and timing and distance and everything at a level that I don't think we've ever seen. And maybe this is a very like over-exaggerated statement maybe, but I don't know if we'll ever see anyone like him again. He's just like, even his build. Like he's extremely strong, but he's got these long, rangy limbs, and he doesn't necessarily have one-punch knockout power. But like we just talked about the DC fight, he's able to create opportunities where he can knock people out. I mean, he's just so fucking good at everything. He doesn't really have a weakness. I mean, there's nothing you can really point to in his game where you're like, oh yeah, John's bad at that. Name it. There's nothing. He's great at everything. I mean, and it's not just that he's really like. It's that he does it against the best in the world religiously, and no one really comes close to beating him. I mean, think about how crazy it is that there are 9 billion people on planet Earth, and we haven't found one that can beat John Jones in a fist fight. Don't even call it a fist fight, a fight.